Alon, let's cut the crap. You went to Alabama. I went to Texas. Should Texas be ranked above Alabama in the CFP right now?
No, not right now, not right now. But I'm also not angry about it either. I mean, we all know that not to make this a college football committee, playoff committee podcast, but we all know how the committee likes to do this. They kind of have their perfect scenario right now where they get to have Michigan and Ohio State up there. They get to have Georgia in there. And basically, they get an eliminator for two of those teams up there. The eliminator for the SEC being the SEC championship game, if that's Alabama and Georgia, and the eliminator for the Big Ten being Michigan, Ohio State. So they get to rank it however they want. And then at the end of the season, it'll go, oh, someone who was ranked number 7 is now number 3. Oh, the drama. Like it's just what they do every year.
I'll just say for my sake, I've watched Texas this whole season.
Yep.
They are not better than Alabama right now. Even though Texas beat Alabama by 2 touchdowns earlier this season, what was it, week 2?
Week 2, yeah.
It's been a lot of football played since then. And I can honestly say, since that time, Texas has looked worse than Alabama. Because going to overtime against Kansas State, losing to Oklahoma, just not looking good. They never can hold on to a lead, and they're not back. They never were. So I will hold my breath to see where. I mean, I'm saying I'm not holding my breath that Alabama or that Texas is going to be ahead of Alabama once it's all said and done. I think Alabama has a better chance of making the college football playoff over Texas.
I will tell you this: as much as I didn't like the playoff when the playoff came into existence,
you don't like the playoff, huh?
No, I kind of like I don't like how it devalues bowl games. That's just me though, because I mean I do like watching bowl games. I like watching players play in bowl games, and because the bowl games are devalued, you often don't get a good product now in a lot of the bowl games because a lot of the guys who are going to go to the NFL or maybe have a bright future ahead of them, they're not going to play in those games. But give me one sec here. Hold on.
Oh.
Sorry about that.
Good.
My AC popped on, and that thing's like a jet engine, so I had to turn it off. But anyway, you don't see the best players play in the bowl games now sometimes. But also, as much as I didn't like the playoff, when the 12-team or 8-team playoff, I think it's going to be a 12-team, right, Derek? Is that correct? 12-team
I believe
playoff?
so. I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So when the 12-team playoff becomes a thing, none of this will even matter. It'll just be top 12. Okay, let's kind of keep your team in a good rhythm and then try to ramp it up towards the end of the season and be hot at the end of the season and then go on a run. So I don't know. This is it. I agree with you. Texas is not better than Alabama right now, but they did win the head-to-head matchup, so I can't be too mad about it.
Well, just some friendly shit talk between friends as I saw that earlier this week, and I was like, I cannot, in all good consciousness, say that Texas is better than Alabama right now. But I'll take it for right now. A little college football for you this morning. Just your opinion, man. Alon filling in for Steven today, as Steven is actually in Texas country. He's in Austin. Hope he has a great time. We'll check in how his trip went with Jesse when he comes back on Tuesday. But just a little college football update. Michigan is beating Penn State currently 17-9, and your Alabama Crimson Tide, I think, are beating Kentucky 28-14 at the moment. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right then. So we'll talk more NFL today, but I just want to start with some college football because Alon knows college football a lot better than Steven, and Steven will admit that. Speaking of Michigan and Penn State, I wanted to get your thoughts on this, Alon. The big story in, I think, all of sports yesterday was the suspension of Jim Harbaugh. And I don't know how you feel about the whole cheating scandal. I don't even think it's really cheating. I think it's just gamesmanship and really good scouting. I think Connor Stallions may have been a rogue scout and did this shit on his own. Who knows? But I don't think it's that big of a deal. And I think it was ridiculous that Michigan, preparing to play in this big game against Penn State, traveled yesterday. And then once Jim Harbaugh got off the plane, was told, you got to go back home. So he is suspended for the next 3 games. He can coach the team during the week. But as far as game days on Saturdays, he has to be home. So I don't think he flew back to Michigan, Ann Arbor. He probably just stayed in the hotel room today. Um, but this whole thing I think is ridiculous. I think it's a little bit too much. They really haven't vetted the whole investigation. They didn't let due process happen. They have no proof of what went down. And of course, this could tie into the Raiders, maybe eventually. But just your thoughts on the suspension for Jim Harbaugh.
Well, the suspension at the 11th hour is bush league. I mean, I don't think you do that. You don't if you're going to suspend a guy, you knew you were going to suspend him. You knew you were going to hand down some type of penalty. It didn't take you until Friday, him getting off the plane on the tarmac, for someone to go, give him his notice, basically that he's being suspended for the rest of the regular season. I agree with you. I think this is more of a case of rogue scouting. I mean, the Big Ten even said that they didn't find a direct connection to Harbaugh or even any evidence that he had knowledge of what was going on. And then they said, however, he is the head coach, so we have to give some type of penalty. And what's interesting about this, if someone could probably fact check me on this, but I was researching it yesterday. The NCAA does have rules on this kind of advanced scouting. I mean, it's sign stealing, but in my opinion, it's because it's in person. It seems to be the technicality that is wrong with it. But the NCAA has rules against that. But the Big Ten is not as cut and dry about those rules as the NCAA is. So to me, it's fascinating that they've decided to suspend Harbaugh. I know Ohio State has been rumored to have things like this go on with their program as well.
Yep.
So, the new Big Ten commissioner, Tony Petitti, he just gets in this year, I believe, and he's already making big waves. And I don't know if it's personal animus or if he doesn't like the University of Michigan football program or what the deal is, but it does seem like they're being singled out. I don't know if you saw, Derek, the statement from the University of Michigan. They said so they're gonna go to court. And in my opinion, I would think a good arbiter or judge would say, look, the suspension's waived or delayed. We'll talk about the suspension at the end of the season. And ultimately, I would say the suspension should get thrown out. And if anything should happen, it should just be a fine for the program. It should be a fine for the university. I don't think suspending Jim Harbaugh, and this is just how clueless sometimes some of these people who run college sports are. Jim Harbaugh is a big star in college sports. And, in some ways, this is going to garner more attention for college football, but in a lot of other ways, it's really going to piss people off. And
of course,
it already has outside of Michigan. So I don't think it's right. I think there's been far worse things that have happened off the field where coaches haven't gotten in trouble and programs haven't gotten in trouble. And to see something that we would all call scouting get punished in this manner, even if it is a little dirty, it just doesn't sit right. And what I would hope would happen is that it's rescinded and instead it's just a fine or something like that. I can live with that. And I think most people would be happy with that.
Well, I would say that in the past, when we've had situations like this, like the Saints with the Bounty Gate stuff, Sean Payton was suspended an entire season for that, and I don't think he was at fault for any of that. Same thing with A.J. Hinch with the Astros. I don't think that he was involved whatsoever, but he ultimately lost his job because of that situation. I think Harbaugh needs to take some accountability for what went down, but then again, I don't think it's that big of a deal to begin with. This whole suspension seems weird to me. I don't think there's any animosity with the new Big Ten commissioner towards Michigan. I think it's just simply public perception, and his hands were tied, and this is what they needed to do to get public outcry to shut up.
Yeah.
But it does seem shady to me. So, I would ask you though. I don't know. This probably isn't the case, but if they do delay the suspension, well, it's already taken into account today. So he's not. I mean, this game's almost over. We're in the fourth quarter here, and he's obviously not coaching the game. So if they do have to delay the suspension, is there a possibility that they delay it to the point where he can't even coach the bowl game, whatever game that Michigan ends up in?
No, because it's a Big Ten regular season suspension.
Right. Okay.
So I think the only way that it affects him being suspended past this season is if it got delayed somehow into next season, right?
Okay.
And he wouldn't be able to coach the opener and stuff like
So
that.
it,
But
it would be the same deal as this season where he missed the first 3 games because
yeah,
of buying some guys cheeseburgers.
yeah. By the way, hell of a year they're having without
Yeah.
without their admiral at the front of the ship there. But yeah, it would be the same thing like that. And uh, the I think you bring up a good point, and I threw out that there may be some animus there between the new commissioner and the University of Michigan, kind of joking about that, but it's just hard to fathom why you would do something like this. And maybe the only reason is, and you brought up a really good point, Derek, he's a new commissioner, and maybe he's trying to set a standard for his conference, and he wants to show everybody that, oh, this is how we run things in the Big Ten, and we like to keep the integrity of the game, even if even if I disagree with how he went about it.
Yeah, no, I think it's just they had to do this because I don't know, just people were coming down their road like yesterday. I don't know if you saw Alon, but on the show Get Up, they had a debate between Desmond Howard and Greg McElroy about whether or not Nick Saban, if this was a thing with the SEC, how would the SEC treat him? I don't know. I honestly kind of side with Desmond Howard on that one, where I do believe the SEC is so football crazy and knows that Nick Saban's a huge star, and football is bigger than anything else. What do you think? If Nick Saban or Alabama was accused of any of these cheating scandal stuff, do you think the SEC would come down Saban's road, considering how much money he's made for that conference?
No, not for this. Not for
Yeah.
this. And I think that would be the same for any of the coaches in the SEC. I don't think
Yeah.
something like this would warrant that kind of response from the commissioner head. So I think, let's use Nick Saban as an example since you brought him up. And since Desmond commented on it, but
Yeah.
I think that it would have to be really bad. It would have to be something bad for it'd have to be a Hugh Freeze situation over at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
When that happened, oh, I wrong number. I dialed the wrong number. Stuff like that. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, the reason I'm bringing it up is because obviously it's a big story with, sports in general, but also with the Raiders having a vacant head coach. Harbaugh's name has always been tied to the Raiders. I remember when you and I were doing a podcast and we had your boy Q on locally in Las Vegas, and there was rumors. I think Bruce Feldman had the report that the Raiders were interested in Jim Harbaugh, and ultimately they ended up going with Josh McDaniels. Now, cut to now, Josh McDaniels is no longer the head coach, and we'll get into all of that. Antonio Pierce did a great job last week, but as I told Steven, I think that it's kind of a, we'll see how they really go here, against bigger and better opponents. Obviously, the Giants with Tommy DeVito is not the best, you know, scale as far as Antonio Pierce as a head coach. So we'll get a better sense on Sunday Night Football tomorrow night. But Alon, with the rumors, I think with the suspension. Well, let me say this first. There's also a story out there that Michigan is considering leaving the Big Ten over this. I would say that's not going to happen at all. I know there's a lot of change in conferences and whatnot, but Michigan and Ohio State are huge for college football, and if that was ever to break up, that would be catastrophic. So I don't see any scenario where Michigan will leave the Big Ten. I do think it's more likely now that Jim Harbaugh is probably going to leave Michigan over this. Not because he's mad at the university or whatnot, but I think he's just mad at what's gone down this year. He was suspended 3 games to start the season because of the whole cheeseburger thing. I thought that was ridiculous, and now I think this is ridiculous. Um, there always has been stories of Jim Harbaugh wanting to get back in the NFL. Just 2 years ago, when the Minnesota Vikings, before they hired Kevin O'Connell, Harbaugh went down to Minnesota to interview with their brass, and ultimately they went a different direction. Um, so I do believe that Jim Harbaugh is interested in coming back to the NFL. But do you think, and we got a long way to go, there's still 8 more weeks of NFL football. Given everything that's going on, would you be open to Jim Harbaugh coming back to the Raiders and being their head coach in Las Vegas?
I wouldn't. I wouldn't. And it's not because I don't like Jim Harbaugh. I just think that ship for him being a top level NFL head coach has sailed. I think once you kind of really get ingrained in the college football style of doing things, especially now with just how big the recruiting aspect is and all that. I mean, I think he's so deep in with Michigan. Not saying he won't leave, because I do think that's a good point, Derek. And it has nothing to do with the University of Michigan, as you pointed out. I mean, he's a made man over there. I just don't think it would be I don't think the timing's right. I think if we were talking about this, when we did 3 years ago or whenever that was, or 2 years ago,
Yeah.
maybe the timing was a little bit better. I think ideally the timing would have been, maybe when they hired John Gruden instead.
Yep.
As, as much as I do like John Gruden, and that would have been the ideal time. I just don't see it happening. I'm not saying it can't happen. It just doesn't feel like it's it is realistic. See, that's the hard part. It's a realistic thing that could happen. It just doesn't feel like the timing is right. I guess that's the best way I can put it.
I would say the timing is right, but I don't think it's the right decision.
Yeah, maybe that's the best way of putting it. And when I say timing, I don't mean like all the conditions around it. I mean
Right.
the timing in terms of him being in his NFL head coaching window. Like,
Right.
I think that window's closed. I think the time for that window to be open as him as a top flight head coach in the NFL, I think that's done.
Well, I felt that way after, the one CFP game where Alabama got the shit kicked out of him by Georgia. And I thought, man, he's never going to have a chance to win the national championship when he's going up against these SEC teams. And I still feel that way. Whatever happens with Michigan this season, I still don't think they're as good as Georgia. I don't think they're as good at, I mean, we'll see what happens against Ohio State here. They lost to TCU in the CFP last year. So
yeah, we watched it. We had front row seats at the
Yep.
book. Yeah.
So I would say that Jim Harbaugh may see bigger and better things back in the NFL. But as far as the Raiders, I just don't see that. I mean, I know the Raiders want to make a big splash, probably. Like if we'll get into everything with Antonio Pierce, but I think Mark Davis is going to be really, aware of what the players want this time around because obviously he went with Josh McDaniels over Rich Bisaccia. And I think a lot, if you ask the players back then, they probably would say that was a bad move. We understand the move. It's a bigger deal to get Josh McDaniels, and it flamed out. But probably the right decision was to go with Rich Bisaccia, just as far as camaraderie and, they were a playoff team. And then going into the next season, they would have the same familiarity with their head coach of a season ago. I just think I think the NFL has passed Jim Harbaugh. I think that I know he's a big name, but I don't think the Raiders really need a big name right now. I think they just need the right coach. They've gone for the big name 2 times in a row here, and it's failed. And they've been mid-season firings. John Gruden obviously went with what went down with that whole thing, and then Josh McDaniels just a few weeks ago. So I don't think they need to go all out for the big name. And if you're asking me, let's see what happens with Antonio Pierce. But names I would consider are like Dan Quinn, Lou Amaramo, I believe that's how you say his name, with the Cincinnati Bengals, Ben Johnson, who's the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. I think there's just smarter moves instead of just going for the big name that's going to attract, Raider fans and the NFL, but things that make sense for the team. And I don't know if Jim Harbaugh makes sense right now.
I don't think Jim Harbaugh makes sense. I do think there's other names out there. Ben Johnson's a good one, for sure. Offensive coach. You can generally, when they're head coaches, you can keep them. You don't have to worry about them moving on. When they're offensive, that's the tough part about hiring a defensive or even a special teams coach to be your head coach is oftentimes if you have a very good offense or a good defense, you'll lose your coordinators and they'll go be a head coach somewhere. But especially you don't want to lose that offensive cohesion. And it's difficult to do when you don't have an offensive head coach. But I think Mark Davis has been burnt twice now with the big splash move since they've been in Las Vegas. And I think Harbaugh would be expensive. It's not that I don't think Mark Davis isn't willing to spend the money. He obviously is. but he's already owing around $85 million to two coaches who aren't coaching for him. And that could play a factor. I mean, just to be realistic, no one wants to take a matchbook and burn up $85 million, with guys who aren't doing anything for you. So I think Antonio Pierce has a legitimate opportunity to win the job, which is something I don't think Rich Bisaccia ever had, other than if they had went on a run to the AFC Championship or something like that. So I think that's a positive, and I think that shows some growth from the ownership. But it also shows that you got it wrong 3 times now. You got it wrong by hiring John Gruden, and you got it wrong by hiring Josh McDaniels, who most people thought, other than the real hardcore, he burned us in Denver kind of people, that most people thought that was a good choice, or he burned us in Indianapolis. So, he got that wrong, and the Bisaccia thing. So I think this is an opportunity to see what Antonio Pierce can do. And then if it's good or if it's bad, obviously you're going to go hire someone else. And there's names out there. And I think that it might be a good idea, though, to hire a new head coach if you do need to, but keep someone like Champ Kelly in place, because I do think that he is equipped and ready for that job. And I don't think that it would necessarily be the best idea to dismantle everything all over again. It might just be a case of, look, there's talent. There's a reason they didn't go make any moves at the trade deadline before they fired McDaniels and Ziegler. It's because they believe that they have talent on the team, which they do. There's no denying that. The question is the coaching staff able to not just motivate grown men who are making millions of dollars? That should be enough motivation in and of itself, but put players in the right position to win. So I agree with you, Derek. I don't think Harbaugh is the right move, not just because it's a big splash move, but just because it's not his time anymore. If there was a big splash move out there that made sense, I think everybody would be all on board with it, but there really isn't that kind of thing. And I'll just put this out there. I think it's more likely that John Gruden would return as coach of the Raiders than Jim Harbaugh getting that job.
Why do you say that?
I think there is some just special affinity there between Mark Davis and John Gruden and Raider fans. And even when it didn't go right the second time around, there's this big elephant in the room that everybody can point to on why it didn't go right. And I could see a scenario where that happens. And to me, that feels like it is more likely to happen than Jim Harbaugh coaching the Raiders. I just don't see that happening. I'm that's more of a gut feeling, but that's my gut feeling on it. I just don't think that that's going to be the move to make. Plus, bring the money back into it. I think there's a way to, not burn more money by rehiring John Gruden. Same way he could bring back he won't bring back Josh McDaniels, obviously, but you see what I'm saying.
Well, didn't they come to a settlement with Gruden already? So that the money's already been paid for, correct?
So they settled. Apparently, they settled with Gruden, but no one knows the details on it. So we don't know if he's still being paid as if it's a contract, but maybe with a lesser amount. I'm not sure. I just don't think Harbaugh has the opportunity. I don't think he's a realistic head coaching candidate for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Harbaugh is more realistic than Gruden. I would just say I don't see a scenario where Gruden could come back to the Raiders. I understand that Mark Davis was angry about that whole situation. I totally understand that. I don't condone the things that Gruden said in the emails, but that whole situation is kind of fishy to me, especially with Daniel Snyder kind of, giving that information away so he could be left alone. I don't, I asked Steven this, I think earlier in the year, and I asked him, do you think that enough time has passed where he come back to the NFL? I think maybe 2-3 years from now, maybe, I think he's more likely to go to the Saints at this point than go back to the Raiders. I think that there's just a lot of bad PR there. Even though Mark Davis, I'm sure, would love that opportunity again, I think that just the public outcry, the same reason why, Jim Harbaugh is not coaching today. I think that just sometimes that stuff rules, even though I don't agree with it sometimes. I just don't think that enough time has passed, and I don't think it would just be that swift of a move that you can have just John Gruden come back to the Raiders. But I will ask you, Alon. We texted Halloween night when this move went down with Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler. What are your thoughts? Obviously, everyone's been frustrated with the play of the team prior to last week, and this move needed to happen. But just your overall thoughts on, you know, deciding to go with him. It was the big move in, the beginning of 2022, and it hasn't panned out at all. And now we're here with Antonio Pierce as head coach of the Raiders. Your thoughts on the Raiders moving on from Josh McDaniels?
Well, in one aspect, more of a selfish aspect for me personally, I was not happy about it. I wasn't happy that it failed, I guess is the way to put it, because I thought it was a really good move, and publicly I had said, "Hey, this is a good move to make." They're able to get a guy who has a winning record and all these things, and hopefully he learned from his time in Denver, and it just wasn't the case. So selfishly, I wish I would have been right on that, but more objectively, it was the right move. It had to be done. You could tell the team was getting worse, and not from a talent standpoint. They were getting worse just because culture. I mean, whatever the reasons are. I mean, we saw those report cards come out at the end of last year,
Yep.
and some of those same reasons were reasons that some of these players brought up with the owner in their private dinners with the owner. Hey, he's overworking us. If the lights are on in the building, everybody's got to be there. Well, the lights could be on at 2:30 a.m. I mean, these guys got to rest too. So, it was the right move. Some thought it was a little long in taking time to make that move, but I think if you take the emotion out of it and you want to, not be just a fire, fire guys, you got to give them some time. And that's about the shortest amount of time you could give someone where you could still say, hey, look, we gave him the time. I mean, they gave him a year and a half. It didn't work out. He, whatever your opinions are on Derek Carr, not you personally, Derek, but the people watching this and listening to this, whatever your opinions are on him, there's no questions about the fact that he was disgruntled because of the relationship that was fractured between head coach and quarterback, and that's an issue when that's your franchise leader and all the passing stats. And then you see he's playing well, I say well with the Saints, but up and down, but
Yeah.
it's okay. It's better than Jimmy Garoppolo had been playing this season for the Raiders, which
No
is
doubt.
something that a lot of people will point to. But it was the right move, and I was very happy that they didn't have a fire sale at the trade deadline before they did it. I was happy about that because to me that signaled, we got good players. It's just figuring out what our leadership looks like to make sure that stuff works. So I see that, Ernie. He's playing like Derek Carr. Well, the turnovers, yeah, that didn't help. But so yeah, it was a good move. It was a good move to fire him. I think they did a good job in elevating Antonio Pierce, and not just because of his personality or his, I wrote an article kind of saying that there's not too many guys who are more in tune with the culture and the mystique of their franchise as an interim head coach as maybe Antonio Pierce is. Maybe some could point to Jeff Saturday, but Jeff Saturday's what is
Antonio Pierce was actually a coach of the staff.
Yeah, he's a coach of the staff, and what's the mystique of the Colts? I'm not really sure what it is. Leaving in the middle of the night, that's what it is. So, yeah, it was the right move. You elevated a linebacker coach up to head coach. You don't have to mess around with your coordinators or anything like that. And they played their asses off for him last Sunday. I was at that game with my dad and my sister. And I will say this, that was the most fun I've had at a Las Vegas Raiders game since the 2021 season. And that was the closest I would say that it has felt to a game back in California.
Okay.
Which
more Raider fans than Giants fans, you would say?
Oh yeah, more that was evident. I mean, almost all the season ticket holders showed up, so that was huge. And it's something that hasn't been happening under Josh McDaniels. The season ticket holders were just selling their tickets, and I think that Antonio Pierce's job was not just to save the season last week to buy the Raiders time for this 2023 campaign that they're in, but his job is also to make sure don't don't want to leave, and that's, I think that's a big part of his job that's not being talked about. And I think that's why he's been put in this position. And it is really to connect with the players and try to say, hey, we got something here, whether they do or they don't. But it's his job in a way to convince some of these guys, no, this is how football is done, and we're all on the same team here. Please don't leave.
So then I asked Steven this last podcast. What do you think is a realistic win total that Antonio Pierce would have to maintain in order to have this job?
To get the job, I think he has to get at least 9 wins, and maybe that's low. I
would say that I would say that's pretty high.
It's okay, yeah. I mean, the reason I say that is for a guy who has no head coaching experience, who's not a coordinator, right? To go on and become the head coach of a team, an NFL franchise, there's only 32 of these jobs, and there's other candidates out there who look pretty good. And I know you mentioned Ben Johnson; he's one that's high on my list. I think he'd have to go on a hell of a run to keep this job. And it's not because the ownership doesn't like him. It's not because the players don't like him. It's just one of those things where it's, you got to go on a hell of a run here, dude, if you want to keep this job, because there's other guys with more credentials than you have, not as a player, but as a coach.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. So then would you say the chances are high or in the middle or low for Antonio Pierce getting the head coaching job?
I think he's got a 50-50 shot right now.
Okay.
They're 4-5. If they go 5-5 tomorrow, I'd still say it's a 50-50. But he's got to win some tough games. And the Raiders haven't helped him out at all by losing some games that maybe everybody thought they should have won, like the Bears or even the Steelers.
No, I agree. But then again, if they won those games, maybe Josh McDaniels is still head coach. So you brought up, sorry, I keep forgetting his name. Who is the general manager that's the interim right now?
Champ Kelly.
Champ Kelly. You think that do you think he has a better chance of maintaining his job over Antonio Pierce?
I do. I think he has a better shot at maintaining his job. I think he's already, so it's interesting with these interim GMs, especially at this point of the season, after the trade deadline, they're looked at as lame ducks, right? There's not really much they can do. But he already made an impact on the team. He was forced to. His hand was forced because the linebacking core was pretty depleted with Divine Diablo being injured. So he went out and got Jalen Smith off the Saints practice squad, and Smith comes in immediately, plays 40% of this team's defensive snaps, and makes 2 tackles. So, I mean, that just shows you right there that that's a good move that you can make, even if it's not a trade. And it shows that he's ready for the job, and he did his due diligence. He got a guy who's familiar with Patrick Graham's defense because they spent time together in New York, I believe.
Yep. My whole thing with this is that I think it was time for Josh McDaniels to go, because everything you read, and we will get into, Hondo Carpenter wrote another article, I think that came out yesterday. He loves running at bullet points, as Steven says. But we got all the details, the kind of stuff we already knew about that went on with, the team meetings, and basically that McDaniels was living in his own bubble, didn't really care about, he was just kind of a robot when it came to football. He had no emotion. The players just wanted to have more fun and more personality and more of a drive from their head coach. And it was just kind of like, Belichick, I think, has more relationships with his players than I guess Josh McDaniels does. So the descriptions were like he was just kind of cold and, like I said, in his own world, and just didn't care to get to know the team very well. But a big thing that was made apparent in the article was Dave Ziegler was basically, for lack of a better term, I guess the guy doing everything for McDaniels. He basically was, what do you want to do? And he would give him his opinion. Apparently, Ziegler did not want to sign Jimmy Garoppolo, but McDaniels has the final say. They argued on a few things. They didn't agree on most of the decisions they made, but in the end, McDaniels had the final say. And Ziegler is the choice that McDaniels had. But I do wonder, and I brought this up with Steven, I do wonder if Ziegler should have been fired in this whole thing. Is it guilty by association just because he was McDaniel's right-hand man? Should we have been given an opportunity to see what Dave Ziegler could have done with his team if he made the decisions? Because whether it was McDaniel's decision to go get Devontae Adams, it happened, and I think you got to credit Dave Ziegler for that one. Kind of the same way, like I don't feel like Mike Mayock should have been fired for the decisions that John Gruden made. So I don't know. I know they were a package deal, and I keep saying that, but I do think that maybe Dave Ziegler should have been given an opportunity to have say in what goes on personnel wise, maybe even say in who the next head coach is. I thought it was kind of a lame thing to fire Dave Ziegler just because of Josh McDaniel's coaching ability.
I agree with that. I agree with the Mike Mayock thing. I agree with the Dave Ziegler thing. I think that Dave Ziegler was put in a lot of bad positions, and this is a bigger topic here. But I have a massive problem with GMs reporting to head coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Head coaches are X's and O's guys, and they're motivators and things like, or they're supposed to be. And I don't want them worrying about personnel. I don't want them worrying about recruiting in the NFL. I don't want them worrying about personnel. Maybe they can recruit a little bit, but I don't want them worrying about personnel. It's the general manager's job to put pieces on the field that the coach can use. Now, there might be some discussions and disagreements about certain pieces and players, but when usually those things are resolved, and they should be resolved in a way where it's like, player A is very similar to player B, kind of which way do we want to go this time? But when the decision is, on the Jimmy Garoppolo thing, for instance, a guy who they really kind of had to skirt through to pass his physical with his foot, you're really putting a guy like Dave Ziegler in a horrible position, because if it doesn't work, he looks like an idiot too. And you're just tied at the hip, and when you get fired, you both get fired. I don't necessarily agree with it. I mean, I understand why they both got fired, but it's unfortunate that you have that situation where the GM is reporting to a head coach who has the final say, and it's kind of like, I didn't want to do this, but I had. What was I going to do? Because I don't have even though I'm the GM, I don't have the personnel authority on anything significant, at least.
Yeah, I don't know if I like that dynamic either. But then again, that happens a lot in the NFL. But then again, you think of the successful teams that have won recently. I mean, well, Andy Reid, I think, has final say with the Chiefs, and Brett Veach kind of is his right hand man with that. So that's a example of a situation that benefits that dynamic. But I would say like Howie Roseman, I mean, he's making the calls. Nick Sirianni just coaches the team. Same thing. Les Snead makes the calls with the Rams, and Sean McVay has to make it work.
Yeah.
Kyle Shanahan, people say that Shanahan's the one driving the show there. I don't disagree with that, but then again, you hear stories like Kyle's like, "Oh, I don't know what's going on with Chase Young," and then I don't know what's going on with Nick Bosa's contract, and John Lynch makes the moves. Now it could be that Kyle tells John, "This is what I want to do," and then he gets it done for him. But I don't know if that's a good dynamic. I think coaches that have too much power and ultimately, have to do too many things, and then they're the ones involved in the contracts. It's better to just coach the team, and then if a player is mad with a GM, have that situation be the case. I think I think a lot of factors this offseason kind of play into the attitude of the team. Like if this is the case where Josh McDaniels was calling all the shots, then he's the one that didn't want to give Josh Jacobs a new contract. So then Josh Jacobs has to come back and be coached by him, and I'm sure that's a certain way that Josh Jacobs feels about Josh McDaniels. Same thing with Devontae Adams when he voices his displeasure with Jimmy Garoppolo being the head or being the quarterback. Not that he voiced it straight up, but obviously there were issues there. So I think that ultimately led to the dysfunction with the team and how everyone felt and how everyone was miserable. I think it was that Josh McDaniels, and credit to him, I mean, he had all the hype being, hired as head coach, but he had too much power. And ultimately that cost him his job, and that cost Dave Ziegler his job. And I think Dave Ziegler's going to get another opportunity to be a general manager in this league. Josh McDaniels, probably not. He'll probably be an offensive coordinator somewhere. He'll follow Bill Belichick wherever he goes. If he decides to leave New England, we'll see what happens in that whole situation. But I don't know. I thought that may have been a move that they could have avoided with Dave Ziegler. But if Champ Kelly is another great mind that can help this team and, motivate the players, stick around. Like there's going to be a lot of talk this offseason about Devontae Adams. Whatever happens this season. I don't know if this team's a playoff team. Probably not. I would say probably not. They're probably not
Probably
making the
not.
playoffs.
Yeah, right now, no.
Yes. So when you hear rumors that Joe Douglas was going all out to go get Devontae Adams at the trade deadline or Mike Evans, you have to wonder if, what that means for the offseason. When they have more time to evaluate things, does it make more sense to, when Aaron Rodgers comes back for the Jets, to go get his favorite wide receiver from the Green Bay Packers? So we shall see. But you were at the game, Milan. Just, your thoughts on the Raiders beating up on the Giants. Obviously, yes, Tommy DeVito was the quarterback. But obviously there was, a different mentality and a different camaraderie, and this team was all in to go beat the Giants that day because of Antonio Pierce.
Yeah, their energy was off the charts. And I think that was the big key factor. I think there wasn't anything too different. For sure on defense, there wasn't very much different at all. But the energy can win you games on defense for sure. And they got after the quarterback 8 times. They snagged a few interceptions. It was huge. Max Crosby was a man on a mission. So was everybody else on that D line. And Trayvon Merrick, the safety, even came up, chipped in with a sack himself. So you could really see that energy coming through on the defensive end. On the offensive side, Bo Hardigree, who's the new offensive coordinator, was the quarterback's coach. He did a great job with Aiden O'Connell. And I was telling someone this last week, earlier this week after the game, I think on Tuesday. I said, Bo Hardigree has worked very closely with Aiden O'Connell because he's a quarterback coach, and quarterback coaches spend a lot of time with all the quarterbacks, not just the starting quarterback. And when you have a coach like Josh McDaniels, most of his attention is going to be with the starting quarterback, who at the time was Jimmy Garoppolo. But I wanted to say this. Josh McDaniels totally failed here in Las Vegas. But if there's one thing you give him credit for so far, Aiden O'Connell looks pretty ready in terms of how to play quarterback. So I don't want to go back to he can't turn a high schooler into an all-pro.
Yeah. No.
But he did get Aiden O'Connell ready. And I can give him credit for that. And I can give Bo Hardigree a lot of credit for that. They went a lot of empty, which I thought was a nice change of pace. They didn't run as much gap blocking. They weren't just trying to double everything up. They did a lot of zone blocking for Josh Jacobs, and that helped him get loose quite a bit. Thought the only mistake that was really made by the coaching staff all day was Josh Jacobs cracked 101 yards, and maybe someone wasn't tabulating it correctly on the sideline or up in the booth. And they put him out there for another run, and he lost 3 yards, and he finished the day with under 100 at 98. But I thought the coaching staff did a really good job. They put the players in good positions. Aiden O'Connell, you can just see the difference with how live his arm is compared to Jimmy Garoppolo's arm. And, they just had energy. They had a lot of energy. And Daniel Jones, who at times looked like, okay, Daniel's going to try to make something happen here. And then before you can blink, he's knocked out of the game. I felt bad for him because seeing it so I watched the replay on television, and I was like, ooh, that does look bad. In person, it was weird. And everyone in the stadium pretty much knew that something had just happened with his knee or his leg or something like that because of the way he just fell down.
Right.
And when that happens, no one's even touching you. You know that something gave. But apparently the report was that it happened on the previous play where he was sacked. So I'm not sure exactly where it happened, but it didn't look good. That being said, Antonio Pierce did a great job. The players totally wanted to play for him. They were all in. I know there's been a lot of talk of, can they play this way every week? Is that sustainable? Well, they can't play with that kind of all-out energy, put all your chips in the middle of the table for one game kind of energy every week. But what they can do is they can continue to be active on defense and create turnovers and create havoc. Max Crosby's going to do that, and the rest of the defense can continue to do that, and that will put Aiden O'Connell in the offense in good position. So there are things that are sustainable, but for people to say, is this the new winning formula for the Raiders? They just have to play on all emotions. It's like, well, no, that's not a winning formula for anybody. And no one in that building is saying this is how we have to go about it. In fact, many of the players like Devontae Adams had to come out and say, we can't do this every week. We just need to play well every week. So I thought they did a good job. My impressions were very positive. I saw a lot of Raider fans that I talked to regularly who it was the happiest that they had looked in a year and a half. So I'll leave it at that with that point. I mean,
No, and I agree with you 100%, Alon. I think that it's good for now. It's good to play on emotion. It's good to have motivation and the fieriness of Antonio Pierce to lead the charge. But we'll see in a couple weeks. When they play Miami, you know, Antonio Pierce has got to figure out how to stop Mike McDaniel's offense. Same thing, is he going to get out schemed by better, coaches in this league,
yeah,
like Andy Reid? They're gonna get a real test here coming up. But reading Hondo Carpenter's article, um, I actually was very impressed with some of the details where Antonio Pierce will go on the treadmill and talk with who's the new interim offensive coordinator, Bo Carpenter or
Bo Hardigree.
Bo Hardigree. They would talk, and he would get familiar with the offense. He's been doing a lot of meetings with the offensive line. When you usually get a head coach that is specialized in offense or defense, they usually stick with that side of the ball. And it sounds like Antonio Pierce is making a real effort to really know everything about both sides of the football. So I really commend him for that. And if anything, he could get the head coaching job. He could get the assistant head coaching job when this is all said and done. I think that he has proven that he's a leader of men. But we'll just see if it equates to wins. And as far as, just reading more of the article, and it was apparent, Josh McDaniels' offense was very complicated. But then again, so are many great play callers. And I say great play callers. It has been the past. Josh McDaniels has been a great play caller with Tom Brady. But as far as a head coach, it obviously did not work out that way. And we saw it was too complicated for Derek Carr. It's been too complicated for Jimmy Garoppolo. It sure as shit is going to be complicated for Aiden O'Connell being a rookie quarterback. And that's, I think, what ultimately led to the team being upset with him, was because he could have, I guess, made it more simplistic. And I know a lot of players on the team voiced that they just wanted to get the win against Chicago. So maybe Brian Hoyer was looked at as the safe bet. But in reality, they could have let him go, Aiden, that is, against the Bears, and see what he's got, and maybe made the offense a little more conducive to his understanding.
I think, to echo your point about the simplicity too, Derek, I think that there's a lot of players on the Raiders who can win one-on-one. I think they have one of them who can win a lot of one-on-two, and that's Davante Adams. And I think, to speak to that, making things more simplistic point, it's like, it doesn't have to be rocket science sometimes, guys. There's enough talent here at some of the skill positions where you can really make it simple, and we'll just go win our one-on-one. The ball comes out on time, and it's a good result. So it doesn't always have to be, the most complicated thing in the world.
It also can't be where the head coach, after a team meeting, is pouting after a practice.
Yeah.
Because that's what all reports from Hondo to Jay Glazer says, that once they had the meeting where they voiced their displeasure with how Josh McDaniels was running the team, and it sounds like no one hated Josh McDaniels. They just didn't like his style of coaching. And Josh McDaniels got hurt to the point where he checked himself out of a practice, basically. And it sounds like maybe he even was really not all there on the Monday night game against the Lions, which is detrimental to the team. So they made the right decision. They moved on. They got the win. Very impressive on both sides of the football. I think Patrick Graham's actually done a pretty good job as defensive coordinator this season, where he was getting a lot of scrutiny a year ago. But as far as, I asked Steven in this, and I may sound like a, get off my porch type of guy when it comes to the celebration afterwards with the cigars. My whole thing with that is, I get it. They got to have fun. And it was symbolic of how tight things were, as far as, the Patriot way becoming the Raider way of, we're expected to win and we shouldn't act that way. And, things weren't very fun. But they wanted to have fun, and Matt Crosby bought stogies for all the guys, and they smoked them. But I liked what Davante Adams said this week, where he said, it's bigger than what you guys really think. Like, it's not just us, deciding to light one up in the locker room after a win. This was kind of cathartic for us. It was kind of therapeutic to get to this point where we needed to have fun as a team. Are we going to do that every week? Hell no, and we shouldn't. And I'm glad he said that, because that actually makes up for the visual of it and the perception of it. But what did you think of that whole celebration afterwards, Alon?
I loved it. I mean, it wasn't Alabama, Tennessee,
Yeah,
so I'm accustomed to lighting up cigars, but the I think it was good for them. I love the fact that the cigars were not purchased. Hey, if we're winning, go out and go get 100 cigars. I love that they were purchased the day before. So that shows a lot of confidence too. And I like that Devon. I agree with you. I like that Devontae says, "Hell no, we're not doing this every week." But it was a symbolic thing, and it was good for us to have fun. And we needed to have a moment like that where we actually, in my opinion, what he's saying is we needed to feel like a team.
yep,
And they apparently never felt like a team under McDaniels this year. Even after they started the season 1-0 and then got to 3-3 or were 3-3. They never. I don't think they ever felt like a team under Josh McDaniels' leadership. So that was why they did that, and I liked it. I liked that the owner showed up in Max Crosby's little Instagram live video. If you saw that, Derek, it's pretty
yep.
funny. Wasn't pulling any dance moves, but it was looked happy. uh but yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where it's okay, let the guys blow off a little steam in the locker room, and all right, we're a team now, and now it's a new season. We're starting down one down though, with 4-5 is the position that they're in, but it's a new season for them. They feel like a team. They have a new leader, and they're going to try to do everything they can to salvage their season. And it's going to be very difficult, but that I think they didn't have to be cigars. It could have been anything, right?
Yeah,
But they needed to just have a moment, and they had their moment, and now that moment's in the past, and that's a good memory for them. But if they want to continue, they need to really maximize the talent that they have and continue to play hard. I think they've played hard in a lot of games, but they they haven't played necessarily with a lot of team cohesion in terms of feeling like a team.
agreed. You going tomorrow?
No, I I sold those tickets like months ago,
Okay.
and I felt really bad because obviously I was like, I've seen the Jets play before, and I was like, I'm gonna sell these just because I don't really. My dad doesn't enjoy that much going to Sunday night games, just because it's kind of a pain in the ass.
No, I get that.
So we sold them, and the funny thing was, well, it wasn't funny, but when Aaron Rodgers got injured, I felt so bad. I was like, man, I bet whoever bought these tickets, um, probably was really excited to go see the Raiders play
Oh,
against Aaron Rodgers,
no doubt.
and now it's no Aaron Rodgers, and I was telling my brother about it, and he goes, "Well, that's life. That's the risk of buying a ticket. You don't know who's going to show up." And I went, God, that's hardcore, man. He's like, "Well, that's just how it is." And I was like, "Okay, you have a bad attitude. I feel bad for the people who are going, especially if they were like, some dad who's taking his kids,
Yeah,
to
no,
go
I
see
get
Aaron
that.
Rodgers or something." So, but
I
yeah,
get, but
no, yeah, I'm not going Sunday. Now, that being said, I have been looking around to see if anybody I know is like, "Hey, I got an extra ticket, so I can go Sunday because I would like to go now."
no, I mean, I get both sides of it. Like, good business move for you, obviously.
Yeah,
At the same time, like, yeah, I mean, I wanted to see the Raiders play Aaron Rodgers. I think the NBC executives were hoping that Aaron
we,
Rodgers were playing in this game. So,
yeah, then maybe that's why they didn't flex it out. They're like, maybe there's some type of voodoo magic just in the tank
you know
somewhere for
what?
Aaron
I
Rodgers.
I think everyone's making too big a deal out of that because honestly, like, I don't see how that's possible whatsoever for him to come
What?
back this season.
Oh, for him to come back? Yeah, I think he at the earliest if they went to the Super Bowl. At the
Exactly.
earliest. Yeah.
I and honestly, like I was telling Steven a week ago, watching the Chargers play the Jets on Monday Night Football, that offensive line, like I don't know when it was going to be an issue, but obviously it was week 1, the first drive. That's something they got to address in the offseason cuz I think it was a ticking time bomb for Aaron Rodgers to get hurt. Now no one wanted to see him tear his Achilles,
Yeah.
but with the way that offensive line was and now the way it's playing now, I think they should wait until they make sure that they like draft a left tackle or do something because Zach Wilson is young and he could take it. Aaron Rodgers obviously can't, and he's going to be even more, immobile now that he tore his Achilles. So I would I would wait until that offensive line is shored up before you bring Aaron Rodgers back.
Yeah, that's something the Jets need to invest in for sure. Just kind of getting into this matchup real quick. The Raiders are going to have some O-line problems as well because Colton
Yep.
Miller is doubtful. But back to the tickets real quick. The other thing was I sold these tickets because I'm going to the Grand Prix next weekend.
Nice.
So I was like, you know what? I don't really want to have also 2 weekends back to back of no free time. So, but they Aaron Rodgers. I don't think he's coming back this season. If he does, that'd be one of the most amazing stories, especially if the Jets are still in contention. But it just doesn't. It doesn't feel. It's an Achilles. I mean,
yeah,
you tear your Achilles. That is. Kobe Bryant ruptured his Achilles, and it was kind of the end of him being Kobe Bryant in a lot of ways. So I don't want to say that's going to happen to Aaron Rodgers, but because he's just got to stand there and throw the ball, but he's not going to be able to do some of those magical things where he rolls out anymore. Not like at the level he did.
no, definitely not. And we'll see. I guess he had like a emergency surgery or whatever surgery that Cam Akers had a couple of years ago, where he was able to come back and play in the Super Bowl. But I don't know. I'm not holding my breath for Aaron Rodgers to come back. But tomorrow will be interesting game. I'm sure many people will complain that it's Jets Raiders. I always tell people, the same people that complained about Bears Panthers on Thursday Night Football, read a book. If you don't want to watch, read a fucking book. Tired of this shit.
Read a book.
Just like we wait all year for football, and obviously things don't go according to plan. And sometimes you get shitty games on not national TV. I don't agree. If it were up to me, I wouldn't have put Jets and Raiders on Sunday Night Football. I wouldn't have put Broncos and Bills on Monday Night Football. Yeah. But here we are. And I would tell people, if you don't want to watch, don't watch.
Yeah, if you don't want to watch, don't watch. You're probably going to end up watching, even though if you don't want to watch, though, because that's what most people do.
Exactly, but they complain the whole way through.
And just real quick, the way the NFL schedule's made, we've probably all watched little documentaries on it and stuff like that, but they do this in a way to make every single game optimal. They do it in a way to make it the optimal schedule in terms of viewing experience. So sometimes you do end up with, for some reason, Jets Raiders on Sunday Night Football, and it's compounded with no Aaron Rodgers. And he is the whole reason that is on Sunday Night Football. It's because Aaron Rodgers was on one side and Devontae Adams was on the other. That is the whole reason they scheduled that game for that date.
Yep, absolutely. And sometimes, as you said, Alon, things happen.
Yeah.
One of the better games this weekend, though, is going to be 49ers and Jaguars. And we'll get to the spread and everything. 49ers are favored. I don't understand this. I know that they're the bigger team as far as, market and whatnot. Deebo Samuel's coming back. Injury with the shoulder is not an issue anymore. Trent Williams, from all indications, it does not sound like he's going to play. Like the way that Kyle sounded yesterday, saying like he is really questionable, and even Trent himself saying, I'm a true game time decision. I would be surprised if he plays tomorrow. And also, like I would say, just because the Niners have had a 3-game losing streak doesn't mean that all of a sudden they're going to start like turning things around just right now. I know that the bye is going to help them out and they're rejuvenated and whatnot, but I know they're still got to figure, like Chase Young is going to be thrown out there, and I feel like he's got to learn like the tendencies of everybody else. It's been a long time since he's played with Nick Bosa at Ohio State. And also the Jaguars are a really good team. And I think the biggest factor in this game is Jacksonville's on a bye, or coming off a bye, and so are the Niners. And normally I would have this be in the Niners' favor. But with the Jags being on a bye and the Niners having to travel all the way to Jacksonville, I don't think this is going to be easy at all. I think a lot of people are kind of like, oh, the Niners, they'll go back on track playing the Jaguars. People got to give respect to the Jaguars, man. Like I saw Kyle Brandt talk about this on Good Morning Football yesterday, where it's like, why are we talking about, how big of a game this is for the 49ers? How big of a game is this for Jacksonville? I know that they're not a huge market or whatnot, but they have the best winning streak in all of football right now. You probably could tell where I'm leaning in this game, but I think this is all set up for Jacksonville to have more success than the Niners at this point.
I would agree with you it's a huge game for Jacksonville to be able to get their 7th win, to extend their winning streak. They're doing it without Trevor Lawrence throwing for 300 to 400 yards a game, which some people would point as a detriment to the team. Like, oh, they're not playing their best football unless Lawrence is doing those things. Well, the numbers don't lie in terms of what they've been able to do with him playing that way. That being said, he's completing over this 5-game winning streak, 70% of his passes. His QBR is up above 70. I mean, he's playing really well. Travis Etienne's playing really well. I know that they've talked about getting more people involved because Etienne's workload is very high. I mean, he's behind Josh Jacobs in terms of rushing attempts, but and Josh Jacobs is the leader in rushing attempts this year in the NFL. So there's some things that maybe they want to change a little bit. Jacksonville does, but they're in the driver's seat. They are controlling the battlefield in terms of where this game's played. They're playing better than the Niners. The Niners are playing very poor football over the past 5 weeks, and for the Niners, it's kind of a okay. Let's get back to who we are. Let's start to impose some dominance again. We are maybe the more talented team in a lot of respects, and even though Kyle Shanahan doesn't have a Super Bowl ring, like the coach on the other side does, I think no one would argue that the better coaching staff is in San Francisco. But to act like this is, we're going to go into Jacksonville, this is going to be a cakewalk because Jacksonville historically is not a great team and the Niners are. I'm with you, Derek. I disagree with that notion. I'm not saying the Niners can't go in there and win. I might pick the Niners to go win, but it's not going to be a get right game in terms of okay, let's get this machine all up to 100% again. It's going to be hard. It could be very difficult, especially if Lawrence all of a sudden has a breakout game and does throw for 350 yards. I mean, that's going to, and Etienne still doing his thing. So that's going to be very hard to deal with. Now, you can look at the opponents that Jacksonville has got on this 5-game winning streak against, and okay, but and none of them are the Niners. Sure, but that doesn't mean that they can't continue the winning ways against a very good team.
Absolutely, and I think they actually have very impressive wins going into New Orleans, going into Pittsburgh, and beating up on those teams. I noticed you said real quick though, Alon. You said the Niners haven't looked well in the last 5 weeks. Are you saying that they didn't look well against the Cowboys or games prior to this losing streak?
I just don't think that. So I know that they beat the crap out of the Cowboys. Maybe 5 weeks was a little much, but
okay.
They didn't look good against like for instance against the Cardinals was a weird game. I remember that game, but yeah, they did beat the Cardinals and the Cowboys. So it's really the last 3 weeks between the losing streak, but even in that game against the Cardinals where they did have some bad quarters. Like they had a bad couple of quarters of football against the Arizona Cardinals. And I kind of was watching that game when that was happening. And I was like, man, you guys giving up like 17 points to the Cardinals, through a couple of quarters. It's just stuff like that shouldn't happen. Now, obviously they go on to dominate. And then the Cowboys game was like, oh my gosh, they, railroaded the Cowboys. It was something like 42-10 or something like that. But
exactly
then
that,
they get some backbreakers, some bad kicking and things like that. And all of a sudden it's like the sky's falling. I don't think the sky is falling on the Niners whatsoever. I think they're totally fine, but this isn't the get right game that maybe you would want it to be. You'd rather have this game be against, I don't know, any other AFC South opponent than the Jacksonville Jaguars. So they're going to have to go in. They're going to have to play a really good game. And I think it's up to them to make sure that they're able to – they're going to have to create turnovers. I think that's the only way that they're going to have to – they'll be able to have a dominant win in Jacksonville.
I agree. I think this is definitely not a get-right game. I think maybe next week against the Bucs is, but I don't see going all the way to Jacksonville how this helps out the Niners. And I'll say this too. I don't know if you've heard about the talking point of this in the Bay Area, Alon, but it's made a big deal. Steve Wilkes, who's been coaching in the booth, is now going to go to the sidelines this week. And everyone's making a huge deal about that. And obviously it's a deal to some degree because the Niners decided to do this. I don't think it really changes anything, to be completely honest. Yes, he can communicate to his defense, but I keep saying this. Steve Wilkes is not a rah-rah, hype you up, motivating guy. He can talk to Fred Warner face-to-face on the sideline. That may help them, but it was fine the first 5 weeks. I think it's just the fact that they've played teams that have, in all reality, I don't think this has been talked about enough. They've played 3 straight weeks offensive coaches that have really schemed it up better than Kyle Shanahan. Kevin Stefanski, Kevin O'Connell, and Zach Taylor all outcoached Kyle Shanahan. And I'm not saying, believe me, I love Kyle and he's a great head coach, but that's the case the last 3 weeks. Could be the case tomorrow with Doug Peterson. It's not anything different. And I think that the defense blueprint on Brock Purdy has been out there for a couple weeks now. Let's see if Kyle can change it for him. Because it can't, the tendencies of Brock Purdy, he's played fine, but he's thrown bad interceptions in crucial moments down the middle, right to safety. So we'll see if that changes. But
those easy throws down the middle have not been there the last 3 weeks for Brock Purdy. You're right.
Exactly. And I think that McCaffrey probably being not at 100%, Adiba not being out there, and Trent has something to play with this. But at the same time, I think they just have been outplayed. That's the bottom line. And I don't think this is a get-right game whatsoever. Anyone who thinks this is going to be an easy game tomorrow, they could blow them out, and I'm totally wrong. But I think that this is, if any, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, they played the Bengals, who probably have the best skill position group they faced so far. But this Jacksonville team with ETN and Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram are going to be really problematic. And plus, on the other end, if Trent Williams does not go, Josh Allen is one of the best pass rushers in this league right now, the linebacker. So this is not going to be easy. For anyone thinking that, it's the Jaguars, you haven't been watching football this year. This is going to be a real bitch for the Niners tomorrow.
It's going to be a hard game. And just also with the whole West Coast team playing on the East Coast thing, I mean, you got that factor going against you. But to go back to Kyle Shanahan, who offensively has been outcoached, we're not accustomed to seeing a Kyle Shanahan offense put up 17 points 3 straight weeks. That just doesn't happen. And I know you mentioned certain weapons being hurt, whether that's McCaffrey not being 100%, but Debo's should be good to go here tomorrow. They're gonna need to do something to score points, and I don't know if maybe that's slamming right in the mouth with the running backs against Jacksonville. Maybe that's the way you control the game. Take some of that pressure off of Brock Purdy. But it's hard. It's going to be hard. And like you said, the skill position players on the other side with Kirk and Ingram and ETN, all these guys that Jacksonville has, and they have a hell of a coach in Doug Peterson who is going to figure out how to get his playmakers the ball. It's a hard game. And like you said, it totally could happen where San Francisco goes in there and just goes, we're San Francisco. We're going to play to the best of our ability. We're not going to make any mistakes. And we're going to, beat the doors off you like they did against Dallas. But it just, the trend of them, the way they have been losing the last 3 weeks, not scoring points, that's alarming. And that can be a tough thing to break out of. When you do break out of it, it's like, okay, we did it. But there hasn't been any sign in the last 3 weeks of them breaking out of that. That's really the problem. It's not like, we missed a few big plays here, or there was something that could have went either way. It was a lot of, they just haven't been able to move the ball. They haven't been able to move the ball and score. That's as simple as it is. And the game has not been simple for Brock Purdy. That's the most important part, Derek. They haven't been able to get those easy, wide open plays with Brock Purdy standing back there comfortably and throwing the ball.
Yep, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. But as far as the rest of the slate for Week 10, which is not great, but nonetheless, it's football, people. Just shut up and enjoy it. Let's pick some of these games, a thing that we call wins or wangs. Wrong one. Hang on here. Sorry. All right. Some of these games along. Let's start with a game in Germany. Looking at these games in Germany.
Oh, your mic's a little. Oh, there it is. You're good. You're good.
Sorry, was my mic?
It wasn't. Yeah. It was like. Now it sounds
whoops.
good.
Okay. What do you think of these games? What do you think of these games in Germany? Are you waking up at 6:30 for them?
I am. Yeah, I love them. I might not be waking up at 6:30 on the dot on Sunday, but I'm up at 7.
You are.
I'm up at 7. It's the first thing I'm putting on, and I like it. I love the energy in Germany.
No, they definitely know how to chant and have a good time in Germany. No, I'm doing the same thing where I start the game at 6:30 and then I slowly know what's going on in the second half.
Yep.
But let's go with the game in Germany this week. We got Indianapolis at the New England Patriots. The Colts are 2-point favorites, and the over/under is 43. Alon, how do you see this game?
I hate this game. I'll take I'll take the under, and I will back the Patriots.
I'm going to do the same thing. I think that for whatever reason, the Patriots get right in Germany. I know the Colts are the better team. They've been really impressive this season with Shane Steichen. But I'm going with the Patriots in this game. I have the under as well. Steven disagrees with us. He's going to take the Colts, lay the points, and go under. I should also mention that Steven has a 3-point lead on me from picking the Thursday night game. He took Chicago. He took the under. He laid the points with Chicago. I stupidly took the Carolina Panthers for whatever reason. Actually, you know what? Because it was a push, he's up by 2. Screw you, Steven. All right.
There you go.
Tennessee at Tampa Bay. You got Will Levis starting for the Titans. I think Tampa Bay's coming off actually, they played last Thursday, so they got some. Last Thursday against the Bills. Yeah, so they've had some time. Anyway, like I said, slate not great. The Bucks are 1.5-point favorites, and the over/under is 39.
I like the over, and I like the Tennessee Titans to win this outright.
Nice. Steven agrees with you. He's going to take the Tennessee Titans, and he's going over. I'm taking Tampa Bay. Just, long time to prepare for the game. Yeah, Will Levis going to, as a rookie, going on the road. I'm going to take Tampa Bay to win, and I'm taking the over as well. Then you got Green Bay at Pittsburgh, a real barn burner with these two offenses. Pittsburgh is 3.5-point favorites, and the over/under is 39. Alon?
I gotta take the under, and I have to take Pittsburgh. Like, these teams are not gonna score 40 points. Now watch them; it's gonna be like a 60-point combined game. But there's no way you can. Yeah, there's no way you can go any other way in that game. I don't think.
No, I think it's the same across the board. Steven, you and I all agree. Pittsburgh, lay the points and take the under. Then we got New Orleans at Minnesota. And by the way, the Saints have had problems with their receivers getting arrested. You hear the story about Michael Thomas throwing a brick at some guy parking on a street?
No, when did this come out?
This happened last night, apparently.
Last night? Okay.
Michael Thomas was not happy about some dude parking on his street, and he threw a brick at his truck. So now he's dealing with that. We'll see what tomorrow.
Oh, man. So he went full John Goodman on the guy's car, like in The Big Lebowski.
This is how you not fuck a stranger in the ass.
Oh.
Hey, man, you killed my fucking car, man. Kill your car.
See what happens, Larry? Oh, man,
see what happens,
bad.
Larry? I love the edited version on TV where it says, this is how you find a stranger in the Alps.
In the Alps, yep.
With that being said, the Saints are 2.5-point favorites in the over/under. Oh, sorry. Saints at Minnesota. Saints are 2.5-point favorites, and the over/under is 41.
This game's going under, and this game's going over, and the Saints are gonna cover. Ugh.
Okay. Yeah, Josh Dobbs getting his second start, or actually his first start. He didn't start last week. For that reason, I think it was just kind of, the Falcons didn't have time to prepare for Josh Dobbs, and I think the Saints will have a better chance of that this week. So I'm taking the New Orleans Saints to win. I'm laying the points, but I'm going under. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. Justin Jefferson may come back tomorrow. We'll see. Steven agrees with you, Alon. He's taking New Orleans and the points, but he likes the over in this game. Then we got...
Oh, I took the over as well.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Then we got the Texans going to Cincinnati. Very impressive performance by C.J. Stroud a week ago, but he plays a much tougher defense in the Cincinnati Bengals, who may be without T. Higgins and Jamar Chase tomorrow. T. Higgins definitely out. We'll see about Jamar Chase with his back. But nonetheless, the Bengals are 6.5-point favorites, and the over/under is 47.
I like the over in this game, even with that number
Ooh.
being high there. And I like the Bengals to cover. I think Joe Burrow gets it done.
You're the only one taking the over. Me and Steven like the Bengals. We like the points, but we're going to go under on the 47. Just seems like a lot.
It is. It is a lot. And C.J. Stroud has been playing really well, but he's going to have to play extremely well against a very good team.
Then you got the game that we were just talking about before we did the picks. San Francisco at the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Niners, despite the 3-game losing streak, are 3-point favorites, and the over/under is 45.
I will take the over here and give me the Niners.
All right. I am going to take the Jags. I think the people are sleeping on them. I think that they've been very impressive. I think they play really good defense. And like I said before, this is not a get-right game for Brock Purdy and the Niners. So I'm taking, and the travel and whatnot, the bye, I'm taking the Jags to win, and I like the over. Yeah. Steven likes the Niners to win. Even with the 3-point spread, he likes the Jags to cover. That's going to be dicey. And he likes the under. So there you go. We're all different on that one.
I think if the Niners win that game, it's more by more than 3 points.
If the Niners win the game tomorrow, I think it's more of a blowout.
Yeah, exactly.
But we'll see. You never know. One of the better games this weekend, the Cleveland Browns go to the Baltimore Ravens. That AFC North is the best division of football right now. Ravens are 6.5-point favorites, and the over/under is 38.
Give me the over and give me the Ravens.
All right, you're laying the points with them too, with the 6.5.
Yes, sir.
All right, I like the under in this game. I just don't see the Browns putting that many points up, and for whatever reason, the Ravens are just juggernauts at home. They beat the crap out of the Lions and the Seahawks to the tune of 38-6, and I believe 37-3 last week. So I'm taking I'm taking the Ravens. I'm laying the points, but I think the under hits, and I'm gonna go with. Oh, sorry, Steven's going with Baltimore. He's laying the points, but he likes the over. Good defense going against each other in that one. That's why I'm going under. Then we got the afternoon slate. The Atlanta Falcons going to the Arizona Cardinals, and Kyler Murray coming back for the Arizona Cardinals, something that I didn't think was going to happen this season, considering maybe they're trying to get Caleb Williams, maybe they're trying to still lose and everything, but he's going to get a shot, and he's going to prove, himself with the new regime there in Arizona. Despite all that, Atlanta is 1.5-point favorites, and the over/under is 43.5.
Give me the under, and I will take the Arizona Cardinals.
Nice. Me and Steven are thinking the same with Kyler Murray coming back. I think it's going to be a little rusty, so we're taking the Falcons to win. We're laying the points, but we're both going under.
Yeah.
Then we got Washington at Seattle. Seattle coming off their big beatdown in Baltimore, and Washington beating the Patriots in New England last weekend. The Seahawks are 6-point favorites, and the over/under is 44.5.
That's a horrible defense to play against after you just get the crap beat out of you if you're Seattle. That being said, I don't trust Washington at all. They're not going to win. You know what? I'll take them. I will take the under in this game, and I will take Seattle to cover, but it's not going to be pretty.
So you're going to lay the points with Seattle?
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm going to do the same, but I'm going over. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. Sam Howell and the Washington Commanders do put up a lot of offense.
They do.
But I think it's going to be Seattle's game to win. Steven likes the over as well, but he's taking Seattle to win the game, but he likes Washington to cover the 6.
Okay.
Then we got the Giants at the Cowboys with Tommy DeVito playing. Hey. And by the way, fantastic quotes on him living at home with his parents today. Amazing quotes. I'll pull them up for you right now. I'll tell you that because of that, with Tommy DeVito playing, the Dallas Cowboys, who just dominate teams at home, are 17-point favorites. Man, it's the biggest spread we've had this year. But as far as Tommy DeVito and living at home, He says, I don't have to worry about laundry. What I'm eating for dinner, chicken cutlets. And all that is waiting for me when I get there. My mom still makes my bed. Everything is handled for me. Sounds like Will Ferrell and fucking Wedding Crashers. The meatloaf!
Yeah, Mom! I wonder what is she doing?
What was she doing in there? Yeah, I can see why this is a 17-point spread, but it's a lot of points. So
3 touchdowns almost.
What do you think? The over-under at 39 and the Cowboys favored by 17.
Cowboys going to have to do all the heavy lifting in this game. Give me the over and give me them to cover the 17. They're gonna have to win like 47 to 20 or something.
Yeah, I think despite us all saying, ugh, that's a big spread, we all think it's accurate. So we're all the same here. You, me, and Steven all taking Dallas, laying the points and the over.
The Giants are just so bad offensively. I
feel bad because, I mean, a fellow ball brother to us, Brian Dable, having a rough year.
Yeah.
And, they might be in the running. Well, they got 2 wins on the season?
2.
I think with the Tommy DeVito situation, I think they're probably maybe the best in line for the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. We'll see.
And what's really sad about that, they are trying to win. It's not like a situation, in my opinion, where they're actively tanking. I mean, their starting quarterback just got hurt. DeVito's back in, and it's not like they're not trying, but they're just that bad.
Actually, I take that back. Maybe Chicago's in the best position because they're not playing well. They won, but Carolina has their pick, or Chicago has their pick next season. So we'll see about that whole thing. Detroit at the Chargers. Detroit coming off a bye. The Chargers coming off a Monday night game. And for that reason, I believe the Lions are favored. They're favored by 3, and the over-under is 48.5.
So go through that one again, Derek. I'm sorry.
The Lions are 3-point favorites.
3-point favorites, the Lions
and
are.
The over-under is 48.5.
Man. Give me the under in this game and give me the Chargers to cover.
But Detroit to win?
You know what? I think the Chargers will win.
All right. So taking the Chargers to win and the under. I went back and forth on this one. If the Lions were coming off a bye and the Chargers weren't playing on Monday night in New York, I probably would have leaned Chargers here. But for that reason alone, I am going to take the Lions to win. I'm laying the points, and I'm going over. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game.
All right.
Steven is taking the Lions as well. He's laying the points, but he likes the under. Then we got the Sunday night game. The Jets at the Las Vegas Raiders. The Jets are a mere 1-point favorite, so basically it's a pick'em. And the over-under is 36.5. Alon, who wins the game?
It's the easiest play of the week. It's the Raiders win it, and the game goes over.
Wow, you think that's easy?
Yeah, because I think the Jets will score a couple touchdowns, but I think the Raiders will have enough possessions in the game to score 3 touchdowns themselves. And then there's going to be some field goals mixed in there, but the Jets are half a team. They're an amazing defense with a horrible offense, and I don't trust Zach Wilson to not screw that game up for New York. So I think the Raiders get a win, and I think it'll be a good win for them.
Steven feels the same as you. He's taking the Raiders to win, but he can't go over on that one, so he's going under.
Yep.
Look, I was very impressed with what Antonio Pierce did a week ago with the Giants. But I think the Jets are a different animal as far as defense. And Zach Wilson, despite taking a shit ton of sacks, does not turn the ball over right now. He's not throwing interceptions. I think the Jets do enough to stay in this game and win this thing by the thinnest of margins. I'm sorry, Raider Nation, but I'm taking the Jets to win, and I like the under.
I can see that happening, too. This is a prime spot for the Raiders just to collapse. That could also happen.
I wouldn't say they collapse. I think it's going to be a hard-fought game, but I think it's just this might be, a 9-3 game, and then Chris Collinsworth is like, this is what you get sometimes. Here's a team that doesn't score. There's another team that doesn't score. It is what it is.
There's a guy who can't score.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
And then the Monday night game, Denver Broncos at the Buffalo Bills. We told you the slate's not great, but shut up and watch. Bills are favored by 7.5, and the over/under is 46.5.
I don't know if the Bills can cover that. It's not, and not because the Broncos are really good. It's just the Bills aren't as good as we all thought they were either.
Yeah, I agree.
So they've kind of fooled everybody. So I actually like the under in that game, and I like the Broncos to cover.
But the Bills to win.
But I don't think it's going to be some big blowout. And that's what Bills fans want, and that's what anybody at the start of the season through the first couple of weeks looking at this game ahead of time, you'd be like, oh man, that's going to be a free win for the Bills, and it's going to be hard. I think it's going to be a hard win for them.
I think so too. The Bills have not looked good at all since beating the Dolphins weeks ago.
Yeah,
because of all the injuries with Tre'Davious White and Matt Milano. Broncos coming off a bye. Bills, I always think that every week, like, this is going to be the get-right game for the Bills, and I haven't seen it happen yet. So, despite all that, I am going to take the Bills to win. I'm going to lay the points, but I think it's an under game. They should beat this Bronco team, but it may be actually a very hard-fought game.
Oh boy.
Nothing like a good hard fart game.
And it could be a hard fart game.
You never know. And then for Steven, he's taking the Bills, but he likes Denver to cover, but he likes the over in that game. So there you go.
I don't know why the Bills have been so. I mean, that 14-9 game they had against the Giants, and then getting beat by it's just they're having a very weird season.
I think it's a combination of the injuries, and I think that Josh Allen has regressed with Ken Dorsey as the offensive coordinator. And I've told Steven this probably since this whole skit has happened with the Bills. I wouldn't be surprised if they moved on from Sean McDermott.
Wow. That could, do you know what though? That could happen. You're right. Yep. And
there are expectations with this team. They're getting a new stadium. It's all, they're not moving on from Josh Allen, but Josh Allen has been turnover prone. He has not looked the same since Brian Daboll was his coach. So I think that they may look to change the coaching, the coaches next season. So we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. That would be a major league move.
We'll see what goes on there. Before we get out of here, Alon, I want to say this real quick. Just terrible news this morning. Former Raider cornerback DJ Hayden and 5 other people were killed today in a drunk driving collision in Houston, Texas. And incredibly sad for everyone involved, those 6 individuals that died. But Raider fans remember DJ Hayden being drafted in the 2012 draft and survived a whole heart condition thing where he almost died during a practice. Went on to have a pretty good career, but that doesn't matter here. It's all about the man, DJ Hayden, and he lost his life today. So I'm sure Raider Nation will acknowledge him tomorrow, but very sad to hear about DJ Hayden and 5 other people dying today. That's terrible.
Yeah, it's horrible, and it just goes to, I'm sure everybody knows this, but drunk driving is just one of the most unavoidable or avoidable things that could ever happen, and drunk driving deaths are totally avoidable, so don't do it. And it's super sad. Still a really young guy who had his whole life ahead of him, and it's sad too to see a story like that and his life end like that as well when it's not in his hands, and because he battled through so much physical adversity already during his career. So it's horrible. It seems like every other year there's something like this that happens around the sports world where someone that we all watch on TV is in a situation like this. But yeah, it's extremely sad. Thoughts and prayers to his family. And also, just once again, I'll put this out there: do not get behind the wheel if you're buzzed. Like, it's just not a good thing.
Nope, not at all. So rest in peace to DJ Hayden. Alon, thank you as always, man, for filling in. Appreciate it. Thank you for your insight on everything today with the Raiders. We'll see what happens. Well, hopefully everything turns out for the best with Antonio Pierce. But we'll be watching tomorrow, and I'm sure everyone will complain about the game that is Jets and Raiders on Sunday Night Football. But
yeah, well, if Aaron Rodgers just comes back, I think everybody will be happy. So
there's no chance that's happening.
Let's get in a circle, sing Kumbaya, and get him ready to go.
and drink your fair share of ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Thanks to everybody on the chat today. Ernie Raylord, not familiar with Raylord. Hey, glad you're part of the conversation.
Raylord Fokker? No. I'm sorry, Raylord.
Well done, Alon. AJ Cruz, as always, thank you guys. We'll be back on Tuesday to react to the slate of games with Steven. Until then, Alon, please say what you say when you fill in for Steven.
Hey, that's just your opinion, man.